I would encourage us not to underestimate the power of positive potential.
Yeah.
When I wake up tomorrow, I have no idea what good is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what good I can make happen. But the idea is to get up and find out.
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for checking back in with us again on another episode of Brewed with Hustle. Today we have a friend of mine, Chris Province, here to share his story and talk about all of the things that he's involved in, which is actually quite a bit, and talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, leadership, the things he's doing to help make other people better leaders. We're going to get into all of that and more, but first I want to check in with my buddy Casey back there producing the show. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's up? How we doing today?
Man, so what have you been doing? I haven't actually seen you in a few days.
Man, lots and lots of editing.
Lots of
editing. That's I think that's what I do nowadays. I'm just an editor.
And avoiding the heat.
Yes, of course.
You had any good beer lately?
Man, well, I tried out the new Res Dog that just came out,
Yep.
and then today you brought in White Cloud.
Yep.
So I haven't even tried this one yet.
Yep.
So I'm fixing to partake during the show here, and we'll see how it goes.
There we go. So I'm actually going to let Chris do the honors of pouring our new beer, Res Dog. He's got one open, ready to pour it in a glass.
I was just kind of waiting around for somebody to start drinking one of these.
I didn't want to be the first.
I'm never bashful, so if you gave me the green light,
there you go.
We're going with the Res Dog. And oddly enough, knowing that I was coming on the show, maybe this speaks something to the brand. The first thing I thought about this morning when I popped out of bed was like Res Dog.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope I get me one of those.
Yeah.
Do we drink on this podcast? Surely we drink. It's called Brewed with Hustle.
There you go. That's it.
Dog.
Yeah.
So here we go, my friend.
I'm actually going to go with my old favorite, Fancy Dance. And I hate to always drink Fancy Dance, but this is a fresh batch, so we just put it on. Just packaged it today. So
nice.
I'm gonna cheers, man.
No skunky beer there.
Yep.
Here we go, baby.
So Res Dog is a blonde ale. We call it an American blonde ale, but it's made with a lot of German Pilsner ingredients, Pilsner malt, Hallertauer hops, and it's just a crisp, refreshing, easy drinking beer. We had Casey's popping into one over there.
Yeah.
We played a golf tournament yesterday up there in Ponca City. And those Res Dogs went down quick and easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like the perfect summertime beer, man. It is absolutely delicious.
Yeah. All right, man. So we're going to get into talking to Chris here. As you can hear his voice over there, Chris. I met Chris when I was in the gaming industry. And Chris was starting a company called Player Performance Group. And we did some work with them when I worked over at Thunderbird Casino. Chris calls himself a performance improvement specialist that ignites the power of purpose to connect communities that sustain movements. I also like having Chris on here because he's Cherokee.
Yeah.
And, of course, we'd love to focus on native-owned companies. He's involved in several different companies, whether he's invested in them. Another kind of a branch of PPG, correct? Mm-hmm. And so I'll tell you what, let's just let Chris get us started on there. What are you focusing on right now?
Right now, for me, every day is about my personal purpose. All I'm in this for is to connect with leaders in a meaningful way to help them identify and achieve their vision of success.
Yeah. And
that's really what every business venture that I'm involved with, that I lead, it's all around that.
Yeah.
To me, business is a means to get to that end of achieving my purpose.
Okay.
So, man, thank you for letting me be here and
maybe
advance that a little bit today.
Yeah. I'm glad to have you, especially because I haven't seen you in quite a while.
Yeah, this is like a real catch-up.
Yeah.
It's wild. I spent a lot of years in corporate, and I would say I dabbled in entrepreneurship. My first job, I was 14 years old. I was an umpire, so maybe that's an independent contractor, right?
Yeah.
But got that cash every day.
Yeah.
And man, $30 at 14 years old, that's loaded.
Yeah.
Especially getting that pop 5 or 6 times a week. So, that was kind of my first earning my own money.
Yep.
And then I just kind of did what I felt like I was supposed to do. I went to college, did the corporate thing, then worked in, I was in gaming and hospitality.
I think we should talk about the college part because you're kind of playing both sides there, right?
Right.
OU and OSU.
My undergraduate is from OSU.
Yeah.
My graduate work was done at University of Oklahoma. I bleed orange.
There you go.
Hopefully I don't get shot for that. I know over on this part of the state, I walk a little softer than where I'm from. But I still bleed orange. But the education, I think Stillwater contributed to my social education, like giving me the chops to do what I do today is really for my graduate work at University of Oklahoma.
And then after college?
I got into... Well, I went to law school for like 60 days.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And I remember when I left, I was like, you know what? I'll pay them whatever they need. This isn't worth it for me to do it. Yeah. So but I had to cut a deal with myself. Like the day I left law school, I was like, man, I cannot say what if. I cannot say what could have been. I just have to be done. Yeah. And I think for just that long-term health and sustainability. So graduated with a poli-sci degree. Went to law school like you're supposed to with a poli-sci degree. Lasted like 2 months. I was like, I saw this mess of like people being $100,000 in debt and, getting out and making $32,000 a year. And just the ROI wasn't jiving for me. And they say the law is a jealous lady, and that's for certain. It eats up a lot of time. And so I just left, never looked back. Had a friend that was a recruiter in technology. He worked at WorldCom and had a job there had one open up as an analyst. So really my first job was like writing SQL queries and analyzing data and clearing revenue constraint. And, it's just like it really set the tone. Having that time as a data analyst and understanding how product availability and revenue work hand in hand. Yep. And then the decisions that can be made and how capital is deployed in order to free those constraints and allow throughput. So just looking at that analyst role differently, kind of accepting that I was in it for a career. I wasn't there to just produce reports. I was there to solve problems. From there, I moved into product management, like building product for the market. So I'd get to look at a market and say, here are the gaps. Here's what I think the market can buy. So I did product development in the telecom space for a number of years. Did a unique project with Hilti and Home Depot to outfit, I think it was 286 Home Depot stores with Hilti Pro Shops, and how we provision those and the logistics behind getting product from here in Oklahoma to those almost 300 locations. And then eventually moved into the gaming space, and boy, that's I would say that's where I had a lot of breakthrough, because it was a lot of people practices really drive success in the gaming and hospitality space. And I had all those technical chops from being an analyst or building the product and managing P&Ls, but it wasn't until I could really master the people practices, my own growth and development, and how knowing myself affected my ability to help others. That's when the floodgates sort of opened for me, but I was never going to get there just being technically proficient. So as it all plays out, as an executive in the gaming space, there's all these people that come up and say, "Oh, I want to help you. Here's this service. Here's this product. I'm going to help. This is going to make your life better." Like 90% of the time, it's bull crap. Like they're a sales organization whose job it is to move product through their pipeline to me. And, it wasn't a situation any different than this. Michael and I were sitting out on the back porch one night, and the conversation turned to, like, what if there was really a company that gave a shit about the people's performance they were selling to? And that was really how Player Performance Group was born. It was not an agency in the traditional sense, because we solve problems that agencies can't. It was the idea that if we truly gave a shit about the people we were working with and connected with them in a meaningful way and led with our hearts, that we could do better business. And it's just a different model. And I can just say, if it resonates with you, it's awesome.
relationship
yeah,
first. Yeah.
sure. And like, what if we just care more? Like,
Yep.
how much value is there if we just care more than the other people in the space and are truthful? And we, man, I think about all those folks you met when you were in the space that were nothing more than a sales organization.
Yeah.
Like, after they made the sale, you didn't see that person again. You were handed off to some junior person or a engineer that should never been let out of the office, and you're trying to get things done. And so it was that handoff that it seemed to me like that was the problem with most of the models. So what we committed to was a model where everyone in our firm would be senior, and there would never be a handoff to a junior. And obviously, it has economic impact, right? We have to work efficiently, and we have to have a high trust environment. But effectively, that's where we jumped off and found and what was that? 2000. That conversation was had July 22nd of 2013. So the next day, we founded Player Performance Group.
Oh, the next day.
The next day.
Yeah.
So talk about like bias to action or defaulting to action. The expense of not having a bias to action is missed opportunity. So after that conversation, I kind of felt the spirit of that, and I'm like, yeah, man, like that's the future. Like caring more about the people you work with and what their outcomes are. Like not just doing the work, but making certain it gets the right outcome for the people that we're delivering it to. I believed in that. It was easy to get behind. And so that's where we jumped off. Again, that was 2013. We worked with over 80 different gaming and hospitality properties. In 2016, we stood up an education services arm that just worked in the gaming and hospitality space. We've since spun that off and made it industry agnostic. So, because what organizational health and organizational design applies the same regardless of industry. Leadership is leadership. Communications frameworks, these mindset development, purpose discovery, these are people things, they're not industry things. So we took what was education services under our legacy brand, and we stood that up as Purpose and Performance Group. And it's amazing, because then we get to be really forward in the gaming and hospitality space. You lead with things like purpose and mindset, and people kind of look at you like you got a horn growing out of your head, right? But when you're talking about organizational health and leadership and doing the right things to get the right outcome, and you can lead with that stuff in the education space. And so it's really gone well. We're still, we operate that legacy technical system work out of Player Performance Group, and we have the more recent brand with Purpose and Performance Group, which is, we do the blogs and the podcast and the things like that to help get these messages out because they're not industry specific.
Yep. You mentioned something earlier when you were talking about how you kind of figured out how you could help people, and you were talking about really self-awareness, like becoming more aware of yourself and how that allowed you to help people. And it reminds me of, like you said, when you come in, when you lead with all this mindset stuff, and you probably catch a lot of kind of weird looks, because we didn't ask you in here for that. We asked you for to pitch us on this other stuff.
And we need help with our marketing.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you take what you learned about how to become more self-aware and then put that back on somebody like a general manager of a casino or whoever you're pitching to? Because that's really what they needed. It was self-awareness to realize, I do need this stuff. I could see like a CEO or whoever you're pitching to kind of, maybe even being offended by the idea of, you're going to come in here and change my mindset and try to get me to, you think I'm not a good enough leader or whatever, right? I could see that attitude or mindset kind of being like that. Is that something you kind of felt? I
mean, it's a bit of a challenge. What we believe, though, and what we try to separate is we always try to separate the person from the behavior. Here's something we observe, like it is more objective. So I noticed we both went through obstacle is the way not too long ago, right? So like that stoic approach
Yep.
of objectively, here's the observation.
Yep.
Is there a world where if it was done a different way, we could have a better outcome?
Yep.
So I'm not speaking to any person. I'm speaking to the observation,
Yep.
using the observing eye, not something that's subjective or me passing judgment.
Yeah.
Because it's only about being relentless about better. And what are the things that we're observing in this space or within the system that can be better? Understanding that every enterprise operates, we call it above the line and below the line, but there's two systems at play. You have the technical system, which is how you transact, the product you're making, your processes to deliver. Like, how are you getting the product or service your enterprise is built around ultimately to market? There's a lot of technical aspects of that, but then the system too is the people system. What are the people practices? Why does your business exist? What is how we go about our business is all found in that people system. So we look at the behaviors of the enterprise being in the technicals, and the mindset of the enterprise being in the people.
Yeah.
And most consultants or most firms or most agencies are going to work on one side of that equation.
Yeah.
And when we talk about outcomes, what we're trying to do is get both sides of the equation. And something that I will share is 80% of your financial returns, your immediate short-term financial returns, are found on the technical side. So if we come in and reconstruct your marketing database, you're going to get 80% of your possible revenue outcomes from that one technical intervention.
Yeah.
But it does not make your business any more sustainable. In order to make the business sustainable, we have to do the hard work, which is the people work.
Yep.
Like developing and emerging mindsets, discovering the real reason why a business exists, getting to those commitments that create a culture, building, corrective action platforms that are tied to the commitments and call back to the power of their purpose, and really restructuring the system to put the purpose of that enterprise at the heart of it and really elevate the people practices to the level of the technical practices. Because when you think about why do enterprises struggle, the ones that are struggling, it is usually not technical. People know how to do the thing, they know how to make the thing. The thing works perfectly when it's to market.
Yeah.
It's the people behind the technical system that create all the challenges. So I always have choice words for people that say, well, the people stuff is the squishy stuff, or the people stuff is soft. All right, let's do it then.
Yeah.
We'll see how soft it is, because I can tell you the people work is the hard work. Why leaders are challenged to tackle it is, one, I think there's an element of shame. Right? They feel like I'm underperforming in this way. I'm just going to...
Well, they're not separating the personal versus, like you were saying earlier. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to remove ourselves from it and just embrace, everyone in every organization needs to be seen, heard, and understood. And until we have the systems in place to accomplish that, and it can all be codified, it's not soft, it's not squishy, it's very hard and takes a lot of commitment.
Yeah, it feels like after learning how to walk, then learning how to be self-aware is kind of like one of the most important things.
Absolutely. Awareness, I'll just share a little bit about our service platform. What we shoot for is what we call an igniter mindset. So we're really trying to ignite the power of purpose in people and systems to get to transformational performance. We're not looking for incremental, right? We want to move performance for this organization and sustain that movement. So we've taken this idea of, if you're familiar with Carol Dweck and her growth mindset work, and then Harbinger Institute and their outward mindset work. What we really try to do is take the idea of growth mindset and marry it to outward mindset. So I want to be all about my individual growth, knowledge capture, behavior modification. How do I get really good at what I do? How do I hold my career in regard? and then I want to apply everything I've used to grow myself outwardly for the benefit of community, and then that becomes my identity.
So kind of like self-development, but then how do you put it into action?
Right.
Yep.
And because if I do all the work to improve myself, but then I hold it, that makes me an arrogant asshole or like a professor, right?
Yeah.
Like I will tell you if you ask me or if you show up to my class. Other than that, you're on your own. Like this aggressive outward approach to everything that you learn and gather through life. Like when we focus that effort and direct those energies to everyone in all of our communities, we just, man, we get this powerful identity.
Yep.
Because when we think about, we structure things, how do I move my family forward? How do I move my communities forward? How do I move my company forward?
Yeah.
And those three things are the things that contribute most to our identity.
Yep. So since we haven't seen each other in a while, do you still, on this other part of what you're doing now, is this still, you work with a lot of the tribes and casinos, or is this really any kind of industry that you go after?
It's every industry. We've been in telecommunications. I was up here today working with a manufacturing group. We train other consultants. I mean, that's some of the most enjoyable work that we do is sharing our stories with people that are looking to do what we do. So that's powerful. And yeah, absolutely. There's tribes that we work with as well. And what I think is really powerful for tribes is they all do so many great things. And I want to speak to the power of communications frameworks for a moment. I think as tribes, we do an excellent job of doing really cool stuff. But if you asked people, what does Cherokee do? What does Chickasaw do? They're going to speak to the tourism commercials. Our communication platforms for the good work that we do day to day, it doesn't show up as clearly. And I think tribes are no different than a lot of organizations in this single regard. We have really good strategies and we have average communication frameworks. So if we start looking at not do PR to do PR, don't do advertisement for the sake of advertisement, but let's start communicating the impacts of what we're doing and how the service is being provided to that community is impacting lives and changing outcomes for people.
Communication. So I know within my tribe, there's a lot of hesitancy to treat the tribe as a business, as like a corporation, right? It's they feel like it's just not in tune with the old ways, So is that something? I mean, how do you guys change that mindset of how they approach what they do day to day and take it more towards like a business, like you're trying to, any other business that you pitch your services to?
Well, I think we have to ask the question, are you pleased with the level of performance you're getting today? And if you're pleased with where you're at, we're cool, man. Let's have a beer and let's chat it up, and I'll ask you how your family's doing. If your performance isn't where you want it to be today, then we need to pull some thread, and talk about, tell me about your communications framework. Tell me about your feedback systems. How do you know that what you're doing for the community is actually getting the outcomes or the impact that you want it to have? How are you communicating internally? What are your meeting cadences? What artifacts are you using to communicate your mission? How are we checking in with other team members? What does the state of the nation look like?
Do you go as far backwards as hey, let's talk about identifying purpose?
That's where it all starts. So at the end of the day, if performance isn't where they want it to be, the person holding the vision, we have to say, why does this organization exist? And then we have to get clarity about how that's interpreted across their leadership team. Because it's fine if there's the leader intent has to be clear first, but we have to clarify that organizational purpose in a way that all senior leaders can understand, and that there can be this decentralized decision making around like achieving it or advancing that purpose.
And that can be challenging with the tribe because that leadership changes all the time.
Right.
Or some of them do.
And I wish, if there was one thing I could wish for, man, it'd be like more consistency.
Yeah.
It seems like every time a system, which I guess is why I'll never be unemployed, every time a system gets, close to being optimized or kind of on top of the water, that regime change creates that cycle. So you could have a top performing regime. And I always say in the native world, it's like the what's in it for me versus what's in it for us.
Yep.
Like those are the only two camps that exist.
Yeah.
So we swing back and forth between the me's and the us, and it creates this constant churn of performance where, it raises, then it lowers. You got to pick it up, do all the lifting. By the time you get all the lifting done, it cycles out again. So, if I had one wish, it would be for nations to have a little more consistent performance.
Yeah. So have you always pretty much kind of had this entrepreneurship mentality, like you wanted to do what you're doing now, or did something just kind of happen that pushed you into it?
That's a great question, because I dabbled, I'm going to guess it was mid 2000s. I dabbled in real estate, just doing homes, and even like coming from a channel marketing background. When I looked at being in real estate, it's like, man, I don't want to play where everybody else is playing. So our strategy was to buy up market and then sell up market, where there was a lot less traffic and there was a lot less competition. So, there were, everybody and their uncle were buying $80,000 homes and flipping them for 120. We were more working in that, buying $150,000 homes or $170,000 homes and selling them for $260, $280. Yeah. So we were playing a different sport, and just finding some space to operate. And I think that's something that, I'm, lucky to be wired with a little bit of vision that way, is stay out of where everybody else is at.
Yeah. So do you feel like that, you said you're kind of lucky to be wired with the vision. I mean, is that, we had a conversation with a previous guest about, is entrepreneurship for everybody? Like, can anybody be an entrepreneur, or is it just kind of you're born with it a little bit, So what I hear from you is it sounds like a big chunk of what you think has worked for you is the fact that you were kind of born with some ability to have that vision.
Yeah, one of my first partners, his name was Jason Ritter, and when we got involved in the real estate stuff, he thrust me into it.
Yeah.
So I had to be thrusted to get the courage to put capital on the table, because all I knew was that corporate, very fixed mindset. Yeah. Here's my check. Here's how much I can afford to spend on a house. Here's how much I can afford to spend on a car. Yeah. Like, that was my world. Yeah. And Jason came in one day. He's like, found a great one. Like, it's bought. And that was it. I didn't have a choice.
It was happening.
The contract was in front of me, and I just had to sign it. I didn't want to go cry in a corner. So I pulled out a pen, and I signed the contract, and there. So it took a definitely more than a little nudge for that first kind of oomph. Yep. But it's like, once you do it one time, now today, it's it's crazy. Yeah. It's like it's a habit. Yep. How about that? And I was reading something that's, I think it was Richard Branson said, business opportunities are like buses. One comes around every 10 minutes or so. Yep. It's so true. And I've had some. I try to stay out of situations that would ever harm me financially, right? So I know where those thresholds are. But we've had some really nice failures. Yeah. We've closed a retail store that burned $250,000. We spent $100,000 on a couple apps that were mothballed. But man, that's the real MBA. Yeah. I don't learn anything from success. I learn things when I'm challenged, and I guarantee you, when I drop $250,000 on something, I'm going to learn a lot. But that's what makes it not wasted. Yeah. Oh, you could have paid off your house. You could have bought 5 cars. Don't care. I got an education. I'm better today than I was 6 months ago for having that experience. And I think not being dejected or saying, well, entrepreneurship's not for me, just because you have one challenge. Yeah. like look at it as the best education you can ever get.
Yeah.
And what did I learn from the $250,000 loss? To stay out of personal guarantees on commercial leases.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to have a commercial lease, like find a spot that doesn't require a personal guarantee.
So I think like if you have like multiple businesses, right, or like you've had a couple successes, you've kind of got your business over here that's working for you and it's keeping you going, and then you dive into something, the apps or whatever, and it fails. Well, you still got this going, right?
Yeah.
But what do you say to the guy that says he's afraid to do it that first time? Like he's afraid to get to start his business or go after this dream company that he wants to start that first time because he's afraid of that failure. He's afraid of losing everything or afraid that it's maybe he can't do it or it's not going to work.
I would say that you can grow as big as you want to be and never have to put yourself in a position of losing everything. Like Jake, when we met, you were already brewing beer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You weren't doing it commercially,
Yeah.
but it was an active passion for you. For me, I started like working out of market. It was a nothing burger when I left. I think my first month revenues when I was no longer in corporate were something to the tune of $1,600.
Yeah.
But you know what? It only cost me $1,000 a month to live.
Yeah.
So what I think the idea is, when you're thinking about it, is to manage your life and position your life into a way where you don't have anything to lose. At $1,000 a month to operate my life, I could do anything and make $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
But it took me 2 years to set it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just paying off debt and unwinding things and getting in the right home situation. And I had a $500 Volkswagen Jetta. And, the challenge is I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs or people that want to get into the game, and they want to drive the Mercedes or they want to drive the Lexus.
Yeah.
And man, just the sense of accomplishment a person will have if they do the Jetta.
Yeah.
Like do the 99 Jetta for $500.
You gotta be willing to eat shit for a little while.
Yeah. Get a bottle of mustard, and it makes those sandwiches taste a lot better.
Yeah.
And just like go do the thing. And I believe if you have a vehicle and a laptop, you can make money.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Like start on nights and weekends. Like I said, I ramped up to a whole $1,600 a month, and then I left my corporate job.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could always go back to the corporate job, and I think that's the other thing here is like the fear is not justified. Like, is your fear rational?
Yep.
If you are out there and you're already a general manager or you're already a director or you're already in a position where you're knocking down, I would just say anything more than $65,000 a year, like there is no risk. Like you can go back and do exactly what you're doing today for the money you're making today.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to position their life to where they have their life balance sheet is appropriate. Get comfortable with the idea of getting in the 99 Jetta, because if you're going to make it in the game, and I think this is the differentiator. Are you comfortable being uncomfortable? And it starts with getting in the 99 Jetta. And if you're not comfortable doing that, it's probably not for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because every day it's really uncomfortable. COVID hits, like what are your cash flows? I don't know, but I better get it all in one place and see where I'm at. Because with 5 or 6 businesses, I have no idea what my cash position is on any given day. So like that, there's those things. So we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And to your point, one of the things we talked about, I said, well, what motivates you as an entrepreneur to get up every day and keep going? I think one, like courage gets us started, grit keeps us going.
Yeah.
And we have to find success in order to inform that grit. And being uncomfortable is key to that.
Yeah.
If you're going to find success, it's going to be through being uncomfortable. But I just want to give a shout out, like what gives me the courage? I have an obligation to the people that gave me a chance, to gave me, the people that looked after me so I could get an education, the teachers that took the extra time with me, my professional coaches, my athletic coaches, everyone who's ever invested in me in a way,
Yep.
I carry that obligation with me.
Yeah.
So, that's not something I can discharge to anyone else. That's something that I've been discharged to.
Yeah.
So I think sharing that, and then exactly the second thing about like what keeps me going is not everyone can stomach it.
Yep.
And I take pride in being one of the people who can.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and kind of related that same situation there. So I've had people, whether I'm speaking at an event or somebody just talking to me about how I started my company or whatever, and they'll come into this thing about how, man, I've always wanted to do this, or I've thought about starting this business, and then I used to really encourage, like I want to encourage everybody, but I used to, man, just do it, But recently I've taken a different kind of approach. Like I feel bad if I really push somebody, or if I'm the guy that talked them into doing it, but they're not really made out to do that. They're not really made for it. Like you said, wired for it, right? So, I mean, I guess like the question is like, for you, when you see somebody like that, what's a entrepreneur look like? Like what is it about them that really makes them even be able to get through the hard times, to get through that stuff? Because everybody talks about, if you get on YouTube, it's real sexy. Like the entrepreneurship is just like you said, the nice car, the glamour, all this stuff. But nobody wants to tell the stories about the really tough times,
Right.
and what it's like to fight through the entire process of getting your business off the ground.
Yeah. What do they look like? Like mental toughness is a piece of it. That's where I would just jump off. Yes, they have to have business acumen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be accountable. You have to be able to build trust quickly. But at the end of the day, you've got to have that mental toughness. Otherwise, there's too many things to bitch about.
Yeah.
You'd spend your whole time bitching.
Yeah.
And so I break it down like this. And sometimes I say things to be provocative and make people think, but this is one of those things. If you want to give 60%, go work for a corporation.
Yep.
If you want to give 100%, start yourself a practice. And if you want to give 140%, go build a business that requires you leading a team.
Yeah. 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 So when you guys are working with some of these companies, and really you're just really trying to get them to see their purpose and really sharpen some of the leadership skills, I want to ask you a question. To you, what's the definition of leadership? So if somebody says they're a leader, okay, well, what's that? What is that? What's the definition of being a great leader? Not just a leader because of title or position, but what's your definition of leadership?
If I took I could say an easy answer. My definition of leadership is my purpose.
Yeah.
To connect with people in a meaningful way and help courageous leaders identify and achieve their vision of success. Like that could be my definition of leadership. If I wanted to go a little bit deeper, like what does it mean? It's moving from here to there.
Yeah.
It's finding a way to move from here to there. And then once there becomes here, to use Steve Laswell's words, which if you guys should look him up if you don't know him, he's awesome. Been my coach for a decade now.
Yeah.
But once you move from here to there, the T falls off and that's here.
Yeah.
So how do you keep going? How do you identify that next there? And what type of obstacles are going to create those red lines that you have to break through? Because we're going to have to put pointed effort and resource into initiatives that break us through on the way from here to there. And leaders and leadership is knowing where there is and having the courage to chart that path and assign the resources necessary to break through the obstacles to get there.
Yep.
I can go on about families and impacting families and longer term outcomes, but I mean that's what it's all about. Identities, role clarity, purpose. Those are the threads we need to be pulling on, and always have a bias to action.
Yep. So do you ever find yourself maybe finding it more difficult to be the leader that you're trying to help create in other people? Do you ever have times where you look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I doing that? So like, in other words, like, what are the things what's Chris doing on a regular basis to make sure that he's still the leader that he needs to be and continuing on the path of development? I don't know if you have routines that you do on a daily basis or just the things that keep you sharp.
Man, this is one, I'm intentional about how I spend my white space. So I'm going to value writing and modeling over everything else.
Yeah.
Like, that's what supercharges our ability as entrepreneurs. You know, from the information we take in, it's going to spark ideas. But to really clarify the ideas and bring them to life, we have to write and we have to model. So I'm going to say writing and modeling is A1. Being intentional about what I consume in my white space is very important because that's what's ultimately going to spark, which is why I personally choose not to read a lot of fiction, although it has value. Right? It's just I find it more urgent to engage in the other 500 books on my shelf I haven't read.
It's like Zig Ziglar. He said, what does he say? You are who you are and where you are because of what you've put into your mind, and you can change who you are and where you are by changing what goes into your mind.
Exactly.
And right now, it's real easy to get a lot of negativity put into your mind, and that's been my struggle. Trying to fight through some of that noise.
And for those leaders that, like, at the onset of COVID went on mission command and I'm in and I've got to do all the things, and like, that's what we should have been. Like, we've never had an opportunity to reset like we had in COVID. And to, like, look, I can fix my expense structure, I can correct strategies, I can do any pivots I've been thinking about, I can finally go digital, I can set a course to do less travel. Like, we've had an opportunity to change our entire existence in this deal. Now, did we double down and do the work, or did we kick our feet up and say, man, it's nice to have this time? Like, that's a conscious decision, but we've just had that opportunity. For the leaders that have done that, though, realize, like, we're borrowing that energy from somewhere. Like, do not cry alone. Like, reach out, call Jake, call me, because, like, this has been the opportunity of a lifetime, and if you treated it as such right now, you're teetering.
I've really worried about that lately, because anybody that knows me or follows me on social media knows that during this is when I've done a lot more stuff. Like, we've created the podcast, we've created a vlog with Skydance Brewing Company, we've worked on new beer recipes and new can designs, like all the things that 4 months ago I was like, I just don't have time for this. I wish I had more time to do this. I wish I had more time to do that. Well, I found myself with all the time. And so I started doing that stuff. So I do worry, like, okay, now things are kicking back into gear a little bit, especially for us on, like, beer production side, right? And so I worry about how, I've put it out there now. We have a podcast every week, every Tuesday.
You're on the hook.
So now it has to happen. And so I do worry, like, oh, man, I'm on that borrowed energy that was really pushing me. And Casey and I have talked recently, like, man, I'm, like, struggling. I'm, and no days off, because whatever time I do have off, I'm in here working on this stuff with him.
Right.
So, what's your advice there? How do you fight through that you had the borrowed energy? It's kind of like when you use caffeine for energy, and at some point you crash.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you,
like, the crash is coming? Like, that's what I would say. Like,
because those changes we're doing, those things that we're doing are important.
Sure,
you've got to keep doing them.
They're strategic and they're important. Right. And it's, yes, you have to take advantage of the time. You're also going to have to pay the piper. So I think right now, why don't we be a little bit intentional and give the piper a little back in an intentional way, so it doesn't get taken in an unintentional way. And it's and don't cry alone, man. Like, this shit is hard. Don't find yourself head down on a Tuesday afternoon and without anybody to reach out to. Like, seriously, like, reach out to me, reach out to Jake. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if I know you. Like, my God that made me made you.
Yep.
I love you. Call me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
and the thing is to understand too that just because you found yourself in tears at 2:00 in the morning and not able to sleep doesn't mean you're not cut out for this.
Right.
It's part of it.
Sure.
We've all had it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, and I'll be a little vulnerable here. Like there was a time during COVID where, you know, I had one of my best friends that was in the hospital, in ICU with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma was in another hospital. She's 87 years old, and you know, I'm just like, is my grandma going to pass away, and I'm not going to be able to see her? You know, is there even going to be a service? Is my best friend going to pass away with two, you know, beautiful kids still at home? Like, and then all the financial pressure.
Yeah.
Like it was tailor made for a meltdown, and then. Like, who am I failing?
Yeah.
You know, like, how many ways am I failing today? Yeah. And so just being able to get out of that space and gut it up and say, this is all part of the process. And I can be better because of this. And, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to see my grandma again or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but right now, like, I'm going to say my prayers and worry about that if it happens. Because the only thing I can do is take care of my business and the things that are in front of me today. And kind of speaking to that, you asked about daily habits.
Yeah.
And, you know, that purpose that I've shared a couple times now, you know, there's some commitments that I have that hopefully help me advance that. And things I think about in the morning. My morning habit is to think about the day, like how do I need to frame the day, what's the pacing of the day look like. And it's always going to be open to disruption. You know, if we have something that gets emotional or something gets heated and or some politics kick up at a client partners, like we're always going to be subject to disruption. But I want to have a clear picture of my day in the morning. And so I'll think about, okay, how am I going to advance my purpose today? And we have an exercise called Today Matters. And through that exercise, we say, just for today, these are the things I'm going to do. And my commitments reside in that exercise. And if you go into my living room, there's right now a yellow flip chart sitting there that has today's commitments on it. And I help other people go through this same exercise. But for me, just for today, I'm going to sacrifice courage for comfort. Or comfort for courage. So I don't care about being comfortable. I want to show up in big ways for everybody that I support. Just for today, I want to extend grace to everyone. Just for today, I want to connect and communicate in a meaningful way with my family. I'm talking about my mom, my brother, my grandmother. Just for today, like I want to do something remarkable for somebody else. Just for today, I want to try something new. You know, I think that's something that's a habit of leaders, just getting something every day for a new experience. And just for today, I want to make sure that my wife and children know that I love them. And if I can do all of these things just for today, then someday I'm going to get the benefit of living a lot of days well lived. And one of the most powerful exercises we do is working through with teams and the individuals within those teams to say, like, finding their purpose and discovering that purpose. And then what are the things that they do today that reflect their values and their beliefs and the things they want to make happen. And it's pretty interesting. Like, even when you do the exercises separate from one another, if we do purpose discovery separate from the Today Matters exercise, when we go back and say, okay, of your Today Matters commitments, how many advance your purpose? All of them. And that's why purpose cannot be made up. It cannot be created. It is a process of excavation and discovery because it's already in our DNA. Like, Jake Keys, your purpose is already in you. You may not have all the explicit words to describe it yet, but I bet if we talked about it and we put the things on the table and we emerged the ideas, that we could get really explicit. And then if you told me about the things that you wanted to make sure happened today, your values would show up. And then if all you did was reflect on your purpose and live those commitments today, you would have a life well lived. And you would be a leader. And the differentiator is leaders are willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. You know, Dr. Manzer at Oklahoma State, he said, this is the difference between being average and being great. Mm-hmm. Everyone is willing to do average. That's why it's called average.
Yeah.
Like, if you will do this much more effort, you will be great.
Yeah.
And for entrepreneurs, you can't afford to not be great.
Yeah.
Because the guy that is great will eat your lunch and send you home with an empty sack. Mm-hmm. If you're lucky, it'll be empty.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's so we've got to go that extra mile, and we have to do the 1% work. If you want to be in that pool, you've got to do the hard stuff. You've got to do the emotional lifting. You've got to be clear about your purpose. You need to know what your commitments are so you can be values forward and go about your business wholeheartedly.
Yep.
And if you get into the business for the money, it's going to be a short ride.
Yeah.
Or you might make money. You might hit the jackpot. Mm-hmm. But are people going to look at you and say, "Man, that guy's a leader"?
Yep.
Or are they going to say, "Man, that guy's the guy that invented the pull tab on top of the beer can"?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, how do you want to be known? And I think that's another thing. It's really being conscious about how people leave your presence. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, I call it 1% work. When we do that differentiating work, we are intentional about how people are leaving our presence and the impression we're making on their lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
When we remember some stupid number out of the day, like less than a minute of every day, mm-hmm. I think is how much. Mm-hmm. I think it's 3 seconds an hour or something. Like, for the next hour, can you be somebody else's 3 seconds?
Yep.
Like, do you shoot to be the memorable 3 seconds, or are you going through life, letting it happen and just transacting through it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference between what I perceive to be differentiating or 1% behaviors and 99% behaviors, which is why the entrepreneurs that are stuck or never take the step or get out there and fail, it's because they're not willing to do the emotional lifting required to find success. Because my purpose has nothing to do with selling anything today.
Yeah.
I can advance my purpose with or without sales.
Yep.
And that feels good, man.
Yeah.
It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah. I actually had this. So I had a phone call the other day, 2 days ago, from this guy, Bill, that we used to buy kiosks from in the casino, and Canadian guy. And he saw a video that I'd posted or whatever, and he just wanted to call, and he was in tears over the video, and he wanted to just tell me how proud he was of me, because he said that when we first met, which was when I first got into the casino business, so we're talking 12 years ago. So that's when we first met. He said that he thought I was just kind of lost or whatever, but it was interesting. The words out of his mouth was he could tell that I found my purpose. Mm-hmm. And so I find it pretty interesting how people, just from the outside, you don't even necessarily have to tell somebody, well, here's my purpose. Like, that you can tell when somebody's really in tune with their purpose, Mm-hmm. And the whole thing about fighting through difficult times, I have a passion for brewing, but I don't think that's what gets me up every morning. That's not what gets me through when it's like been a bad week. How do I get up on the 7th day and go do what I need to do, right? And so, but I will say, when I think about purpose, but more like the responsibility of the purpose, that I feel responsible now to keep doing it and to keep providing what I'm providing, like that, man, like that gets me motivated, because it hits an emotional string or whatever in my heart or my mind. And so, like, I can remember when my dad was alive, and we would sit at a bar and have a beer together. That was like the best thing ever, you know. And with my friends or somebody I work with, like when we're in Vegas at G2E or whatever, there's just something about these moments, right? And that's, man, like for me with the brewery, that's what I'm trying to create.
Sure.
Because I feel like I'll look at social media, somebody will post something on Instagram and they'll tag Skydance in it, and it's them and their mom, or them and their dad, or them and their friend that they haven't seen in forever, and they're sitting at one of our partners that sells our beer. They're sitting at their bar having a beer. Like, creating those moments is so freaking powerful, dude.
Right.
And I can be having the worst week, but then I get on social media and I see something like that, and I'm like, okay, you know what I got to do now? I just got to go create this other great beer, and we'll get back on track. Keep going or whatever. So I agree, man. Like, that's to me probably is maybe the biggest key of success, is being not just identifying your purpose, but being like every day in tune with it.
Exactly. It's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's, I just feel damn lucky to lead an entire enterprise that's focused on that one thing.
Yeah.
Helping people find their personal purpose, helping teams understand where they fit into the puzzle of achieving an organizational purpose, and helping enterprise understand why they exist and the behavioral commitments that they have to move from A to B.
Yep.
And, I think every leader has a quest for transformational performance. Like, if it's not, even if your performance is where you need it to be, are you promoting people into the workplace? Are you developing courageous leaders to add to the business ecosystem elsewhere? Like, there are a ton of other considerations other than just like, do you make money? So if your money is there, are you producing what is right for the ecosystem that you're a part of?
Yeah.
In like the 1% leaders, they embrace that. And, there's not a question in my mind, Jake, like Skydance Brewing is going to be an incredible success. I want to touch on, like, you're one of the most likable and kind people that I know.
Appreciate that.
And, I think a note for entrepreneurs out there is, like, you have to be likable. I don't think we say it explicitly enough, but like, one of the strategic things about being an entrepreneur, especially in B2B sales, less so in B2C, but in B2B, like, you've got to be likable. And if you don't know yourself well enough to connect with other people, stay in the corporate job, because it's going to be very painful out here.
Yeah. People buy from people they like. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And people like me, like, who are the people like me?
Yep.
And if I'm in this crowd, people like me, Jake, I know drink Res Dog.
Yeah.
And specifically anything from Skydance Brewing. Like, that's what I know to be true.
Yeah.
But I love what you're saying about your purpose and, like, the whole making lives better aspect. Like, even if we're brewing beer, so one of the things that I do, I'm involved in a fireworks company, and people are like, well, what's fireworks got to do with anything? I'm like, they're fun.
Yeah.
Right? Just like playing a slot machine. Like, it's fun for no other reason. Like, I think about the families out there enjoying the 4th of July.
Oh, man. I can imagine you handing one of those big, giant bags, the big kid or whatever, the big, giant bags full of stuff. I can imagine that little kid's face as his dad's taking that back to the truck,
Exactly. And then, like, to the dad, I'm like, I know you want the biggest shit on the block.
Yeah.
So come on, man. Let me hook you up with that.
Yeah.
So for us, even when we do the fireworks thing, it's about the best product at the best value.
Yeah.
Like, can you get other fireworks cheaper? Yes, but not the stuff we carry.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to make sure that your family has a great show. You're spending your hard-earned money with us, and we're going to make sure you guys have a damn good time.
Yeah.
So like, the same kind of methodology applies across all of our businesses. So I'm in, I do the fireworks thing in the summer. I've got a good buddy of mine who leads that charge. He's a teacher, so his summers are free, and that's a lot of fun for us. We're in the fitness space with Balance.Yoga.Barre, and it's a great brand. It's a great vibe. The community there is incredible. Kind of this idea of making lives better. Bringing people in, giving them that space for an hour to spend with themselves and energize or rejuvenate in a way that they see best. The families on the 4th of July. These are all things that fulfill that purpose. And how do we just create those different communities and add value to people's lives and find ways to monetize those. That's kind of what my entire entrepreneurial spirit is about. And, like, I fail when I try to build an app for a financial reason. And I deserve that. But I had to learn that over time. Like, if I try to deviate from my purpose to try to make a buck, I deserve to get hit between the eyes. And that's how we get better. That's how we know what to do in the future.
It's also like the purpose is kind of like insurance, right? Like it's ensuring that you're not going to be miserable when you are rich. Like you hear about these people make all this money and then they're depressed or they're just not happy, and I think they're missing the purpose. Like they don't have a purpose. Their purpose maybe it was just to make money.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that is hard to be happy over that.
Sure.
There's something about impacting other people's lives, when you can see that you've had a positive impact on somebody else. There's something about that carries on well past, money or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you never know where that impact is going to take place. A very insignificant transactional communication between, maybe on my side could be very meaningful to someone else.
Yep.
An extension of grace, a thank you, something like that. And, through all this, the idea that let's lighten up on the feedback and ramp up the recognition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know when somebody says, do you want some feedback on that? I'm like, no, but you're getting ready to give it to me, so lay it on. Now I could say, I'm a really mature leader, and I say, give me all the feedback I need at all. I do. That's what I say. Yeah. But that's not what my emotions tell me to do. My emotions say, run away. You're getting ready to get some really bad news that you don't want to hear. Yeah. But I've got to stomach it, and I say, I do need feedback to get better. Go ahead and give it to me. But at the end of the day, I would encourage all of us, ramp up the recognition, scale back the feedback, because we're all going to be good at what we're good at. The things that we're challenged by, I would encourage people to overstate it. Don't mess with it. Yeah. If you, the opposite of your strengths are your weaknesses. If you go spending effort on trying to correct that, it's not very efficient. Yeah. So mark it as a blind spot, know it's there, focus on your strengths and move on. Yeah, yeah. So earlier we were just kind of talking about COVID a little bit and what it's been like. So, for your particular business, what are some of the pivots you've made? What's some of the challenges you faced over the past 3 months? And then what did you use that time for to pivot or to do the things that you weren't able to do before? Yeah, man, it was awesome. Just immediately dug in. Especially with, 5 different organizations. Yeah. We first thing was, all right, we finally get to do this rebrand on Player Performance Group. So let's get this showing up the right way. So that website will launch this Friday. We had done all of our marketing communications for Purpose and Performance Group, and you just really hadn't dialed in our pitch decks, our RFP responses, those sorts of things. So we immediately started a project to finish those and really make sure that they align with our Marcom, and we have those opportunities to kill the bear. Yeah. When we go big game hunting, do we have a chance to win? And we want to make sure we're positioned there. So rebranding, pitch decks, RFP responses, got into some specialty manufacturing. There's a custom PPE that we're working on that, everybody's in the PPE game. Yeah. I'm going to go back to the whole house, when we were flipping houses, we were up channel. Yeah. Same thing with the PPE that we're working with. Okay. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. At the end of the day, it's worth taking a shot because it's a PPE that hopefully will allow people to connect and still connect and achieve their purpose at the same time. Yeah. So dug into that. Don't want to be left behind there, but really started thinking about who are the customers coming out of this that we need to be looking at. Who are the most likely client partners? And here's what I think is going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of business leaders and enterprises out there that are just a little bit disconnected from the market. They had this asset base that was being applied in a way pre-COVID, that when they come out post-COVID and try to apply that same asset base in the same manner that they were, there's going to be a disconnect between that system and the new market. So we're going to have, we're talking about what are those industries that are most likely to get disconnected from their asset and the pre-COVID business practices, and looking specifically at those, and thinking things like, man, what if people don't have cash? What if their revenue run rates are lower And it's like, man, like I'd love to perform better, but I can't pay you guys. Okay, so now we have a model to take equity positions in companies, where maybe we bring capital to the table. You can't pay your bills. Let us, if we see the meat on the bone, we'll capitalize, take equity positions, and then drive the performance. So just really rethinking everything from our pricing to who are the target client partners for us in the post-COVID space, and then really getting clear about what we decided, man, is like to not be bashful about who we are, who we're for.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not a progressive, courageous leader, it's going to be painful for our companies to do business together.
Yeah.
If you've got it figured out, more power to you. If you want to learn some stuff together and try to accomplish some really cool shit, like, let's talk. But we just have to accept who we are. And I think that's part of being a successful entrepreneur. If you try to be too many things to too many people, your core message gets diluted. And so if you don't want to talk about purpose, you probably need a different outfit. We're probably not the right folks. If you think it's squishy, if you think it's soft, okay. Keep running that system one technical and get that all the way dialed in. And when you suffer, you have to call us anyway. So
I mean, I think we kind of had to wake up to that a little bit too. So we really tried to be, obviously, a Native American brand, but we also tried to do things that were really Oklahoma branded, and we were trying to not alienate people who aren't Native American. But in the end, I realized, well, this is what we are. We're Native American. Our brand we're Oklahoma City's Native American brewery, and we got to go all in on that. And so we've done some rebranding. Res Dog's replacing a beer called Oklahoma Gold because Res Dog fits, the Native American branding. And like you said, don't be bashful. I mean, that's what we want. We want to put it all out there, and this is who we are. We started the vlog for that purpose, I think a lot of people are afraid of vlogging. They're afraid of people seeing under the hood a little bit, But I don't know, man. I just welcome it. Like, I think it's like, hopefully I am likable, like you said, and if I am, then that's how we'll capitalize on it, is put that out there so people can really get to know us. I feel like more businesses need to do that. Kind of take an approach of like showing people the personal side of who they are.
I think it comes across way more authentic. If I trust Jake Keys, I trust Skydance Brewing. And think about every inauthentic person and like, do you trust them?
not
answer.
Really.
And I think if there's one thing that I could put on the table today, it all starts with trust. I think anyone that's ever been in any sort of team-based development understands that. But there's this idea, when it comes to instilling trust in others, how we feel about people is what is going to be reflected back to us. So if we are authentic and we care and we love without condition, like if we live wholeheartedly and we are entrepreneurs wholeheartedly, man, that's what we get back. And that's the success. So we can say it in terms of likability, or we can say it in terms of like, it's what's in our heart that gets reflected back to us by the market. And if people know when you're authentic, and those are the brands that get trusted. And when you're out there for show, and from being in the business, the guys that roll into the clubs 12 deep, hot handing everybody and Captain Slick, but like, that's crap. Like, why would I ever do business with that person? And I look at leaders that I respect, and I'm like, would you ever do business with that person? Like, we all know who that person is. So leave them to do their game, be authentic to yours, and like, that's what's going to get thrown back. And then like, stay engaged with resource. Like, I know you're a reader. We shared a couple things, but find out who you like. And find someone that challenges your beliefs, or will split your head open a little bit. Now I can remember as I first went through the process, and in 2007, I think my dad passed away on Father's Day. My son was born in August, and my granddad passed away in December. So it kind of moved me from being third generation with no kids to being first generation with kids, and like blew my mind. Right, like that was a lot of disruption, and it was right then I started going through this process, and just who were those people that were speaking to me, and what did I need to learn about myself. And where I started was with airport reading. This is before I even went to grad school. I started with Drive by Daniel Pink, just principles of motivation, mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and things like Blink from Malcolm Gladwell, like trust your gut. Everything you've already learned up to this point is in there, like trust those feelings. And then there's this really powerful book called Hidden Messages in Water, and it's by a Japanese author, and it basically spoke to, like, they put water like on a table, and they spoke to it, and then they evaluated the crystals after they had frozen them, and the water that people were like, I hate you, you're ugly, you're dumb, whatever, like the water that was mean to and said bad words to, like it had really deformed crystals, and like was really like not symmetrical or asymmetric, and it was just this mess of crystallization. But like when you had the water over here that was cared for and nurtured and spoke to in soft tone, like when you froze those, like the crystals are symmetrical and beautiful. And so people say, oh, that's hogwash bullshit. It might be, it might very well be, but like it made sense to me as as that being our primary composition, that if we're cared for, we take better form. And that was really my only key takeaway from the book. It's an easy read, a light read, and I took it and passed it around 20 times. It's like, here, read this, check it out. But this idea that the more you nurture something, the more form it's going to take. And the other thing interesting about that book is one of their findings was, as deformed as the crystals were for the water that was not or spoken to in bad ways or mistreated, the most misformed crystals were from the water that was neglected, that was put in a closet and left to its own. So no attention whatsoever. So you kind of, if you can make those connections to human existence, I think it started to make some sense. And for the folks that want to say it's yoga babble or whatever, that's fine too. I just thought it was cool, because these three things, this trust my gut, understanding like purpose is key to my motivation, and being able to go out there and be courageous and inform my grit, and then this nurturing of living things. Those were the three things that started my process and pulled me out from that just really tough spot, and got me thinking about things differently, that I could not stop letting life happen to you. And I had maybe some good intent, like do good and don't suck was about as far as my purpose went. But really start putting those stakes in the ground and formulating my life around those beliefs. And those three books were that process for me. And I think if you went and talked to a lot of what I call courageous leaders, the folks that have done the work, like they all have their different sets of things. Like there's some set of information that connected with them in a special way that got them to go values forward and go through that process of unearthing and discovering and getting their beliefs on the table, and essentially putting that stake in the ground and saying, this is what my life's going to be, and I'm going to create it to be that, instead of like, man, I hope nothing bad happens today.
So the things you did, a few things maybe kind of changed a little bit of the way you guys are going to do some things moving forward because of the virus and how that's affected the world and changed things. And I know you guys are probably doing things with some of your clients to help them navigate through how they're going to be coming out of this, how they're going to change. So am I getting it from you that, you think the whole COVID thing, the effects of it are like long-term, like beyond the next 6 months, or do you see businesses maybe getting back to somewhat of a normal, beginning of next year? The reason I ask is because I own a brewery. So the whole personal face-to-face, the interactions of people in the tap room, that kind of stuff, that's what we exist for, right? So
Right.
I think it's like there are times I wonder, like, man, are we going to have to, like, did we just start a brewery at the worst possible time? Or are we going to have to change, like drastically change our entire business model? What do you
Right.
foresee coming out of this, or even how
Yeah.
long this effect lasts?
Well, I think part of exemplary leadership is not assumptions. Like, I don't know anything. I value what I don't know a lot more than what I value what I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to accept that I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I do know is if I can identify what I need to let go of, then my life will be a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I immediately said, like, this is the great reimagining, right? This is the chance.
Yeah.
This is to do all the things. I'm so busy, man. I just want to read for 30 days. I just want to write. I just want to. Well, here's your chance, bud.
Yeah.
Like, better get after it.
Yeah.
And so this idea of it being that time, but releasing all connection I had to what was. And that way, whatever emerges from this time, I can deal with. Because if I bond and hold in regard what I knew the normal to be, I'm setting myself up for unnecessary suffering. I just want to deal with the economy as it emerges and not be tied to my ideas of what an economy should be.
Yep.
And that will allow me to be more agile and adjust to the demands of the market. And I think it's made our team a ton more innovative. I mean, as educators, you can imagine we go from educating in a room full of 20 people to educated online.
Yep.
But I tell you, like, the applied learning and the exercises have gotten so much better.
Yep.
Because we don't have that social interaction that creates value. Now the value really has to be created, by, like, well, here's the question, like, how good are we really?
Yeah.
We say we're educators, like, can you do it on multiple platforms?
Yeah.
But the level of innovation has been so just unreal. The courage of our client partners to, like, stay with their programs and be like, no, we're with you guys. This is the reimagining.
Yeah.
We need to do the work now, and not, like, let's hit pause for 90 days.
Yeah. It's almost like it's more important now.
Yeah, and those were the only two camps. There was no middle. So being in that education and development business, there was, this is it, let's get after it, and there was pause.
Yeah.
There was no middle to any of that.
Yeah.
So it's been, I mean, I just would encourage us all to let go of what was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really embrace what's in front of us, because I think everyone can find a brighter future than how they existed then. And then I think that's I would encourage us not to underestimate the power of positive potential.
Yeah.
When I wake up tomorrow, I have no idea what good is going to happen. I have no idea what good I can make happen. But the idea is to get up and find out.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about things that keep us going, I don't know if anybody out there was similar to me, but I was going absolutely bonkers. Like, just being confined, and I'm an extrovert, and I draw energy from being around people, and being confined, like, I just needed to see people, and I get outside when I could, go to the park, but it's not the same, right? We're not connecting the same way. And we're social creatures, and we need those moments, and we need to be part of our communities. So it was super tough.
Yeah.
And it's still out there. Like, I don't know how much longer we have to do things this way, but I think we're at least doing things, in a somewhat smarter way.
Yeah.
And taking the right precautions to, not transmit it and catch it and take it home to our families and all of that. But it's been a journey, and I hope that everyone can find the other side of this more rewarding than how we went in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm for one interested to see what businesses come out of this, like new businesses. If you look at all the the Ubers and different companies that have happened, they were developed in tough times. Whether it was tough economic times or events that happen. I mean, some great company's going to come out of this still. It's pretty interesting. So, all right, man. So just a couple questions.
Okay.
What's anything cool in the immediate future for Chris or any of his companies that we need to be on the lookout for?
Man,
What's tell everybody the name of the podcast again?
So our podcast is called Magic in the Room.
Okay.
It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite platform.
Yep.
My other partners in Purpose and Performance Group, Hannah Broderud and Luke Freeman, we do that on a weekly basis, and similar to this format, no video.
Yeah.
But we chew it up, and we get dorky on there about organizational health and leadership, and so if anybody wants to check that out, that's awesome. I would encourage you, before you do, make sure you spend 30 minutes writing or modeling or doing something productive that way. Be intentional about our white space, but we love it. It's fun. It's a hell of a commitment, and I really appreciate kind of what you're doing here.
Yeah.
This is you guys got a real production. Like ours is like us in front of our computers with our microphones. This is like
I
a
got my
real
secret
production
weapon
house.
back there.
Yeah,
That's Casey.
I'm telling you, man. I feel legit today.
Not much of a secret now, guys.
But what's in the future for us? I'm excited about kind of this equity modeling and performance-based pricing that we're going towards, to help those client partners that may not be just flush with cash flow right now, but still need the transform performance. We're going to be able to get deals done. We can all laugh if we want, but I'll tell you, like, the power of MLM distribution right now is really incredible.
Yeah.
And, I know for me, like, rather than going out and building the brand and doing all the social and trying to capitalize a product or service, like, how does MLM play out for services?
Yep.
That's something that we're really noodling with and see if we can, leverage that a bit. But anyway, so those are some spaces that we're looking at. We've got a couple big projects underway. We're working on the Ellis Park project over in Kentucky right now, and that's a redevelopment with the Laguna tribe out of New Mexico. Got some exciting things kind of in the pipeline with Navajo Nation, and just kind of keep doing the thing.
Yeah, cool.
It's there's a lot of need out there, and I would just encourage everyone, don't ever worry about being unemployed. Like, if you can be a person of value that adds value to people, like, you can always get a job.
Yeah.
And if you really want to put it on the table and see, what it looks like on this side, just do it. It takes a little work to prepare, but if you can stomach it, you can find a way. Or give me a call. I'll be one happy to coach with you. Spend some time talking about it, the trials and the tribulations. And in fact, we just launched our coaching platform this week on our website.
Cool.
So you can go in there and meet all of our coaches, schedule time with coaches. So that's something we're really getting into. To spend more one-on-one time with leaders. We've really been anchored in team-based development up to this point, so getting more into that one-on-one space. So those are some things that might be coming out of our shop. We got, we're doing apparel. We're doing capital leases on some places now. So it's getting to the point where me as an entrepreneur, like, I have people that really manage and lead some of these individual communities that I'm invested in. So obviously the broader this base of business gets, the more, like, I'm popping in to deliver some strategy and making sure we have the right leaders in place. But at the end of the day, my primary focus is on the two businesses that I started initially. It's about Player Performance Group, which does the technical side of gaming and hospitality and, like, the data analytics, and building marketing programs, and it's about Purpose and Performance Group, which handles the people system of all industry, and really again just ignites that power of purpose to drive systems and people forward.
Cool. Last question.
Okay.
I call it the one thing. So imagine you're either on your deathbed, or for whatever reason this is the last day we're ever gonna see or hear from Chris. And somebody who's either a leader or a new entrepreneur, they want some advice from Chris. What's the one piece of advice? What are you leaving them as you leave this planet? What are you leaving with them?
Yeah. Be intentional. Act in intentional ways. Frame every day with intent. Because every day we're creating our legacy. There's only two types of people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that know today is part of their legacy and the ones that don't.
Yep.
Create an intentional legacy, create an intentional existence. Be intentional with everything you do and every role that you have. Father, learner, educator, entrepreneur, whatever your roles are, be intentional with how you allocate resource into those roles. And I'll tell you, I would leave them with this. People that don't think about how they behave in unthinkable ways.
Yeah.
So you have to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I believe, is the start of that differentiating continuum.
Wow. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on.
You bet, man.
I do want to
Good to be
acknowledge
here.
you, man. So when we first met, and I met you through Michael,
Yeah.
that was about the time I was planning the brewery and kind of really maybe just trying to get my nerves up.
Yeah.
And seeing you guys taking on Player Performance Group, getting that up and going, watching you guys hustle and really getting after it motivated me a lot.
Yeah.
And you guys are one of the people that really just kind of helped push me, and man, I can do this. And being around you guys and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Well, man, you got this. It's been amazing to see your growth, and congratulations on everything. And if you ever want a res dog, just come over to my place, and I'll make sure to have a lot of these coldies on hand for all my friends as well. So, man, you're doing great things. I love this platform. I love your care for especially Native American entrepreneurs and the difference that we can make. I think the bridges that people like you build, they matter. And like this work right here today, it matters. Mm-hmm. And it's these things that drive our communities forward, and in people seeing that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's possible.
Yep.
And I just, if you're in that space, if you're a Native American and you're thinking, I want to get out there, but I don't know how, call me.
There you go.
Just call me,
Yeah.
and I'll share what knowledge I do have and tell you how much I don't know, and try to help you as best I can to get out there and do it.
Well, it helps having guys like you on the show. So
I appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you. All right, guys. We appreciate you guys watching and listening wherever you're listening to it. Make sure if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Hit that like button down there. That really helps us get this content out. The stuff that Chris talked about today, more people need to hear that. If you hit the like button, pretty good chance more and more people will get to see it. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to catch podcasts, you guys can check us out on there. Make sure you subscribe to our show on there so you don't miss any of these episodes. So, Chris, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Cheers.